in the heart of Lincoln Park, where we are with those kids of the Lincoln Park community every Tuesday. We also are part of our Resources and Community Hope Rich House, which is a safe haven for the community. Gun violence is not just a police problem. It is all of our problems. The community must be involved. Some know who the shooters are. Some know where the guns are being kept. Some witness these events and remain silent. I applaud all the community leaders that are coming forth to stop the violence. The Fort Pierce Police Department will always do our part in keeping our residents safe. We stand by our motto, "In honor we serve," but now I am pleading with the community that they have to do their part in keeping our community safe. They must. I applaud your efforts to all that is making that happen. I thank you for being here, and God bless you.
Chief, why won't you answer any of our questions? Chief. So I have
Okay, just so that we can recap what the chief has just mentioned, there are a lot of efforts that we're taking to address a lot of this violence. Just so that we can bring it down a little bit, May has been, we saw a spike in shooting activity in May. She described some of the events. I want to get back down to Will's question from earlier, where in the event, I believe on May 8th, where we had a shooter with multiple injuries and multiple deaths. One of the questions was that if we were able to determine whether Bernard Smith was the actual shooter for the entire thing. So as of right now, witness testimony, surveillance camera, and certain evidence suggests that he is the person. However, for us to definitively say that that is it, we have to wait on the science to come back. We have to wait on ballistics to match the rounds that were fired. We have to wait on toxicology, essentially the medical examiner's report, so that we can definitively say that in fact was him that was responsible for all of the deaths and the shootings.
So just generally speaking, it appears that Bernard Smith killed both, or fatally shot Mr. Benjamin and Devin, I can't remember his last name, the gentleman who works here.
Yes.
And then the exchange of gunfire
With the police occurred, correct. Yes, sir.
If the police chief won't answer questions from the media, why should members of the community feel confident to answer questions from police?
Because the police chief has been involved with the community. She has been out there. She has been working with community leaders on her own with the police department, so she is answering questions.
Can you list some of those specific community meetings?
I will provide you with those contacts afterwards. I don't have that information with me, correct?
With a bunch of people who've gone to community meetings to talk about solutions of violence. I'm sure you know the mayor and commissioners have been there, and the police chief has not been there. There hasn't been anyone with a badge. That's part of the frustration they've been telling us. That's why I'm trying to understand that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention, because it's important that we recognize the fact that you guys are here to shine some light on whatever it is going on. And you're absolutely right. The community we have a moral obligation to provide the community with this information. Now, I can't tell you that the chief cannot be everywhere all the time, okay? She has been, and I will get that information to you after this. I will get that information to you as to who she met with after the fact. And those did involve community leaders.
Why is the chief not taking questions on this today?
That is something for me to discuss with her after the fact, and we will be able to provide something to you after. Now, it doesn't prevent us from future meetings so that she can be able to provide some more answers. As these cases evolve and as time moves on, we will be able to provide additional information. Now, just so that you can see what's going on with this spike in violent crime. Understand that there are a lot of moving parts to this. Understand that it's not just us out there fighting crime. The chief is in constant communication with our city staff to ensure that the police department is provided with the tools that they need to address a lot of these spikes. That is continuous. That is something that needs to be done all the time. Now, I cannot speak for the city officials. I'm not here on behalf of the city officials. I'm here on behalf of the police department on what we are doing and the strategies that we're employing to address the crime. That's what we're doing right now.
Amber, do you have any questions before I fire Susan?
Yeah, when it comes to strategies, you guys mentioned some strategies. So
Yes.
what are some changes that you guys are making to help combat the issue?
Sure. So what we have done is we've taken an all-encompassing approach to crime. And if you bear with me a little bit on here, I'll explain to you what this is. So what we have is that once we start identifying patterns and trends for specific crimes, we look at that and we see how many disciplines from the police department we can address or put towards that particular problem. So you have one problem, and let's say you have 4 different missions within the police department itself. Every single discipline is afforded the opportunity to apply their mission to that particular problem. So we took one problem and we spread it out amongst different disciplines because everybody can see things through different lenses. So you have community engagement, which sees it through a different lens. You have patrol, which sees it through a different lens. You have these units that we are going to be incorporating, which are violent crime units. These units are specifically trained to identify, with the assistance of the crime analysts, to identify violent offenders and target the violent criminal offenders so that we can at least try to get a hold of it, try to apprehend them, and try to prevent future crimes. But this is very fluid. It's constantly moving. Now, with every strategy, and this is why I appreciate all of you and the jobs that you're doing, because you guys also give us ideas. You guys have input in the strategies that we employ. We listen to you, Ethan. We listen to you, Amber. We may not talk to you right then and there, and we will eventually, but we do listen to what you say, and we listen to your concerns, because your concerns are what you're getting from the community. We fully understand that. So we're trying to address all of those things. That's just one strategy. Basically, you're taking one problem, we're applying different tiers and different levels to address that one problem. So when you're looking at it through different lenses, you apply that mission there, and then all of a sudden you'll start to see that that problem is going down. Now, with that also comes accountability. So if you have a particular unit, let's say, that's addressing a particular problem, that unit is held accountable to ensure that everything and all the steps are taken to address that problem. And that is spread out amongst the entire agency. That's just one strategy. The other strategy we have is developing a relationship and fostering relationships with the community, encouraging them to come forward. A lot of these crimes have occurred, and I can tell you that the success rate on our cases are higher, significantly higher, when the community is involved. When the community talks to us, when the community calls 911, our success rate is significantly higher because of that. And I want to thank the community for that, because that's important to be able to recognize them for that. Now, the other side to that is that there are instances, and in the packet that was provided to you, there are some incidents where the community did not reach out to us. We found this out after the fact. So we have people that are showing up at the hospital that are injured. Hospital staff notify police. Now we're finding ourselves working backwards, trying to identify crime scenes, trying to locate witnesses, trying to locate victims. So these are all of the things that we're confronted with on a daily basis. But I definitely, give me 1 second. I definitely want to highlight the good work, the great work on the part of our officers. I want to take one case in particular. That's the case that you were talking about with Bernard Smith. In that particular case, we had an individual that, according to witness accounts, they saw this particular suspect earlier in the day, and they explained it as him being somewhat acting erratic. Okay? Witness accounts believe that this person may have been under the influence of some unknown substance. They don't know what it is. They just know that this person was acting erratic. Officers respond to a call of a shooting. When the officers get there, they start addressing that shooting scene when they hear shots being fired in the area. Understand one thing. These officers ran directly to the gunfire, something that no one else does. These officers are trained to do that. They go to the gunfire and they try to eliminate any threat that is posed on the public. When they went to another location where the gunfire was, there was evidence of a shooting, but there was no suspect there. They moved on to the next one, typical of an active shooter situation, where Now, all of a sudden, a suspect is encountered a few blocks away, and that's when there was an exchange of gunfire between the officers and the suspect, ultimately resulting in the death of the suspect. Now, just to point something out to you, that is the second one officer involved we have with a suspect firing at the officers first this year. Understand that there is a lot of violence going on, but we are taking the right approach through strategies, through listening to you folks, listening to the community. We're open to engage with anyone to help us with the strategies that we put into place because we're taking a holistic approach to this. Like I mentioned before, we can do our work, but we're also open and amenable to your suggestions so that we can implement that in our plans. And that's one of the important things that I wanted to highlight about that. Yes, sir.
In some of the statements you've made, and I guess the chief, and in some of these synopses here, seems to be a common thread about you guys getting to not getting cooperation perhaps from the residents or the witnesses, because I mean obviously if you have the evidence you're going to make the arrest, and if nobody's coming forward, can you talk about that? Like why folks won't come forward and cooperate with you guys in some of these cases?
That happens a lot, and there's a lot of reasons why that may happen. It could be that they're scared. They're terrified of coming forward because they live in these neighborhoods. It could be that that's just not how they grew up, basically telling on somebody else. Or it could be that maybe they just don't trust the police. It's a common thing that happens. How we overcome that is by trying to foster the relationships with the community, which the chief mentioned a couple of programs that we use to encourage that relationship, such as the Courageous Kid, grabbing and addressing the kids at an early age to show them that there are other ways of doing things. They have options at their fingertips instead of going one way, instead of going the violent way. There are other ways to address some of these issues. So although that may be an issue, I can tell you that for the most part, the city of Fort Pierce community, they are engaged with us. And it shows in here where there was a few times and throughout, this is just a snapshot of May, just so that you're aware and put it in context. It shows that they do in fact cooperate. There are some cases where we have a victim and the victim refuses to cooperate. Okay, they're quite off. That happens more often than not. What do we do at that point if the victim themselves refuses to cooperate? So what we have is that the violence continues because nobody's coming forward. That's not to say that we can't. I love the city of Fort Pierce. I believe in the community in Fort Pierce. They want to assist in making sure that violence does go down in their area. I see it personally. I see it with all of the events, with the programs, Unity in the Community. You see everybody getting together, and that's important to highlight as opposed to all of the bad. Now, what you have behind me and what you have on your packets is a 6-month comparison, just so that you get an understanding. January 1 to June 11th of 2023, comparing that to January 1 to June 11th of 2024. Just to provide you with some perspective as to overall crime, violent crime, nonviolent crime. And it's important to make sure that we see that. Yes, there was a spike. Ethan, I cannot tell you why there was a spike in May. I really can't tell you that. I can tell you that it doesn't appear that any of these things are connected. Any of these incidents are connected. We have some that are domestic, which are almost impossible to be able to prevent a domestic situation. Okay? We have some that were just parties where people and juveniles got together, not publicized or anything. They just showed up and disputes happened and there were shots fired at that point. We have some where we have specific things like in the Bernard Smith case where we're trying to make sure that we have all of the signs come back so that we can make sense of why that actually happened. We can speculate. We can look at the evidence that we have right now and say, okay, this could be an avenue where he's responsible for everything. But until those reports, the toxicology and everything comes back, we're not going to be able to make that definitive decision. Yes, sir.
I overheard the city manager talk about how they're at the ground floor when it comes to violence prevention. How could all these things you're doing in the community also be true while at the same time being at the ground
Well, it's a relevant term, ground floor. Ground floor for them may not be a ground floor for us. We've been in the business of community policing for a very long time. There are instances where some may perceive it as being the ground floor, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing because it leaves us open to accepting more input. We could never say that we're at the top of our game as it relates to fostering relationships with the community because that's ever changing. That's constantly fluid. There's people moving in, there's people moving out, there's transients, there's all types and all walks of life. Our responsibility as a police department is we're constitutional police officers. We enforce the law under the Constitution, but we apply the law with humanity. That's important to note, that when we're out there enforcing our laws, the state of Florida and the Constitution, we're applying humanity to it. Now, with that comes the fostering of these relationships, where you may not be aware of some of the organizations that the chief, in fact, did communicate with. They may be community leaders from big areas. Now, some of those meetings that you may have attended, I'm not sure of her schedule, so I can't talk on her schedule. But I want to make sure, I just want to make sure that everybody understands
I
that.
get that. I think what I'm asking is, you guys keep talking about this community policing, but yet you're also talking about people who are not cooperating with police. That sounds like to me that your community policing model is not working.
No, it is working because we also in the same packet have people that are cooperating. It's not a perfect science. Policing is not a perfect science. People are not perfect sciences. We're all different. So as we approach different people, we will apply different strategies. It's not going to happen overnight. This didn't get like this overnight, so it's not going to take overnight to actually put a plan in place to address it. So there are also shifts. Sometimes things happen at certain parts of the year, at certain parts of the time. That holiday season, we all know that it's a very tough season for people. We don't know, and there's so many influences to what's going on. We have the socioeconomic influence, we have the geopolitical influence, we have personal influences, we have just perception of everything. We try to ensure that the perception of the police department is positive. We try to get everybody to come with us. We try to talk to everyone we can. Some people will tell us we don't want to talk to you, but we don't take offense to that. We continue our work. So our relationships and our bonding within the community is working depending upon what side of the spectrum you're looking at, what lens you're looking through. Because as you can tell, if this would have been filled with people that are just absolutely not cooperating, I would have probably agreed with you. But it's not. It's filled with both, which means that what we're doing is working, but it doesn't stop us from continuing. We will enhance that relationship building with you, with everyone in this room and everybody in the community. That's what we want to do. We want to enhance it. We encourage your input. We really do encourage, and I appreciate your input because it helps us along the way. We don't just put a stop to it. No, because we want to be able to be amenable to everybody's input so that we can build a plan that's all inclusive. Because I can tell you right now, if you're part of the plan, you're going to tend to own that plan as well. And you're going to want to see it through. You're going to want to make it work because you're part of that plan. That's what we try to build with the community. We want them to be part of our plan. We want you to be part of our plan so that we can actually be successful. It takes everyone to make this a success, not just one or two individuals. And I understand the climate. I understand that there may be some communication lost through translation. I'm here today to tell you that we are pushing through that and we are open to your suggestions. We want to work with you as opposed to against you. And that's the whole message for today. And as far as the strategies, I explained them earlier. There are a lot more. We have individual officers that, believe it or not, go out there on their own, and you actually see them doing things because of who they are. You actually see them communicating with the community, playing basketball with these kids, running around with these kids, courageous kids. We sit there and we read with these kids. We show them that there are other options. So yes, it works. We are working towards that area. It's a work in progress though, just like everything else. We want to be able to give you everything we have all the time, but we want to make sure that the information we give you is vetted and it's accurate, because what we don't want is the community suffering from anything that goes out there that's not accurate. So that is important. And to talk on time on how long it takes, because I know that was one of the questions for some of these investigations, okay? Investigations are unique to themselves. Each investigation that comes up, the detectives get assigned, they have to look at it through different lenses and take different approaches to it. None of them are the same. But when you start looking at applying and following the law, applying for search warrants, arrest warrants, we have to be able to build probable cause to get that stuff. Probable cause takes time, whether it be through video surveillance, whether it be through witness testimony, whether it be through any other means. We have to be able to build cases, because at the end of the day, we never want to re-victimize victims. If we don't do our jobs correctly, that's exactly what we're doing if we don't do our jobs correctly. So we serve with honor for that reason. We serve with respect, and we will always provide superior service for that reason, because we answer to the community. They deserve it. We have a moral obligation to make sure that the community gets what they are looking for. And we will continue to be out on the streets. You will see us. If you're out there, you will see us. If I'm not there, please call me and I will go. It's one of those things where I want that open relationship so that we can all come together and address these issues. And that's where we are right now.
What about a ShotSpotter?
ShotSpotter is a tool, but with ShotSpotter, I can tell you that it is a tool that requires even more resources, because a machine itself is able to identify where potential shots are being fired, but it's still a response by police, right? We may or may not get there in time for us to be able to encounter the suspect. So it still requires a specific tactical approach, because now we know that somebody was shooting at this area. That requires a lot of resources, monitoring, programming. All of these things come into effect when we start putting tools. Again, nothing is off the table. However, that's just one of those tools of the trade that people would consider.
Major,
Yes, sir.
3 questions. Does the city of Fort Pierce have gangs?
Yes.
Does the city of Fort Pierce have a gang task force?
The city of Fort Pierce have gang units.
Gang units?
Yes.
Will there be a task force to try to fight these? Maybe answer that question after my 3rd question. Is the gangs behind or in the center of these crimes in the last 6 months?
I can't say that it was in the center of the crimes, because like in here you see that you have domestics, you have just people popping up in crowds, you have all these things. So that is not something. Is it a problem and a challenge? Yes, it is a challenge. We do have units. Those units do work with our federal and local partners to address the problem, because let's be real for a second here. Crime is not unique to an area. They don't understand, criminals don't understand jurisdictional limits. They go beyond those lines. We're in the jurisdiction of the city of Fort Pierce. This now allows us to work with our federal partners, our local, county, and state partners to address it, because we have to be able to collectively develop a strategy to address those particular problems. But I cannot say that gangs is the cause of all of this, because there are different things that are going on, not just that. Is it a challenge? Absolutely, it is a challenge. I will not deny that at all.
Generally speaking, for the layperson, I don't know, what is a ShotSpotter, and do you guys have? I'm only asking correct.
We don't have ShotSpotter. ShotSpotter is a form of technology that is able to triangulate through different positions where shots are actually being fired live. When that information comes into ShotSpotter, it gets immediately sent to a dispatch center, which automatically dispatches the police to the particular area. I couldn't talk to you about the specifics and the technicality of the ShotSpotter, but I can tell you that that's the generic version of what a ShotSpotter does. But a lot of people fail to realize that it's just a tool. It's not the only tool in trying to address some of the challenges that we have.
Earlier, the chief had mentioned that there had been 11 shootings in May, but I think we only know about 6 of them.
They're in the packet.
Are these like separate situations? Because I'm counting in May.
Well, there was 11 shooting incidents, which is reported to CAT. It doesn't necessarily mean that there was a victim associated with the shooting. So basically, this was shots that were being fired. At times, the officers would respond. They would identify evidence to suggest that there, in fact, was a shooting there, such as shell casings or maybe witnesses saying they heard somebody shooting. And that's a good thing, because I can bring you back to one thing that's in here. And one of the incidents, a shooting incident that we had, where there was individuals in a white vehicle that actually ended up shooting at another group of individuals. They fled the scene. One of our officers were able to identify the vehicle. When he got behind the vehicle and attempted to make a stop, that vehicle refused to stop. The officer now, and this is incredible to say, the driving skills of this officer were just absolutely amazing and flawless. This officer got involved in a pursuit, and the suspects, while they were in the pursuit, began breaking down the firearm inside the car and throwing it out the window as the pursuit was going on. The officer had the foresight to observe all of these incidents as he was pursuing this vehicle. Ultimately, the pursuit ended because the suspects just realized they couldn't get away from the officer. They stopped the car. You see them put their hands out. After they were taken into custody, that same officer, which so happened to be a canine officer, took his dog to the area and conducted an article search. They recovered every single piece of that firearm and were able to put it back together and trace it back to those individuals, and they were arrested. So you see that we are working. These officers are hyper vigilant right now. They're applying all of their training, their tactics, and their passion for this city and the residents to address a lot of these issues. They're tenacious. Our officers are tenacious. I'm very proud of them, extremely proud of our officers. They go out there and they apply the law with humanity, which is important. But they're so well trained that they continue to want to be trained, which is what's invigorating for me, is that they seek additional training as their career progresses.
And I know I've spoken with several members in the community who are concerned about this violence. Some of them tell me that they won't even go outside at night. Do you have anything that you'd like to tell those community members?
Yeah, talk to the police. And if there are any particular issues in certain areas, we accept those phone calls. They have the ability to either dial 911, they can call the Crime Stoppers anonymously if they feel that they don't want to be directly involved. They can call the police department and say, hey, I want to be anonymous, but this is what's going on. We respond and we try to saturate certain areas that become problems. And this is going back to that strategy that I spoke to you about earlier, where if there's a particular problem area where we identify a pattern or some trend that's going on, we send all of our disciplines there, because a patrol officer is going to see something different than a community engagement officer. They're trained differently. So they're able to apply their own training and education and know-how to one particular area to address it. We cannot fix everything all the time. This is why it's important for the community to be involved with us. But we will address it. We develop strategies based on analytical work. We identify patterns, we identify trends, and we address those things, and we take a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach to certain things.
Sorry, I'm maybe a little bit confused by the answer to that question. So if I'm scared to walk outside my house at night in the Northwest neighborhood, your answer should be that I should call 911 to give you information.
If you're scared for a reason, you call 911. But the strategy that we're devising, once we identify that there's a particular area where people feel scared, that's where we send our different disciplines to address whatever concerns they may have. In other words, if you live in a particular area where you feel that it is unsafe because of violence, gun violence or whatever, what we end up doing is that we make that as part of our strategy. We look at it from different lenses, and we apply our resources to that to address it. Then we make contact with that person, and that's how we do it. So that's what we do through every area of the city to ensure that everybody is recognized.
I'm sorry, I feel like we haven't asked this question yet, so I just want to make sure I ask it. These shootings, they're in the Northwest. Why do you think all these incidents happen at that part of town?
There's no rhyme or reason for certain things. Like I said, there's so many influences, outside influences, that can affect a particular area. Geopolitical, socioeconomic, whatever it is. again, though there's so many people in that area that are wonderful people, absolutely wonderful, which is why we're so committed to ensuring their safety and working towards that. That's why it's important for us, because the majority of the people in there are incredible people.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I just want to make sure I asked it directly.
Is that all?
What else should we ask? What else should I ask you if I was smart?
Are you guys gearing up for this weekend? It's Father's
We
Day.
have already in hand. Well, you do know that Father's Day is the 18th holiday that's celebrated, right? So Father's Day, they don't like fathers for some reason. I don't know what it is. It's not important. But we do have enhanced patrols. Okay, so we do see certain areas. And again, I want you to understand the whole policing aspect of this. We go through strategy. We go through an analytical work. We try to identify patterns that have occurred, and we try to focus our resources to those patterns so that we can address them. So we do have enhanced patrols, and we do have teams that are constantly working to ensure and identify certain areas that may be problematic.
Any
But we-
last push that you want to tell the community, like any important information that you want community members to know?
Yeah, we're absolutely here for you, for the community. We're committed to them 100%. We are working with city officials to provide us with the tools that we need to ensure the safety and security of everyone in the community. We're open. Call me, call anybody here. We'll interact with you. But I want to assure them that we are there for them. Absolutely there for them. Right? Yes.
Just to review, specifically speaking of the gunfire incidents and homicides in May, and you mentioned that there was nothing necessarily linking them all together, whether it's gangs or drugs or what have you. That's got to make things pretty tough. I mean, it just doesn't seem like there's really any pattern, I suppose.
There wasn't, but if you look at the map, we start to address those areas by putting different resources in those areas and enhance our efforts. So, again, for those people and community members who do legally possess firearms, we're encouraging them to be responsible about it. Please don't leave any firearms in your cars. That is something that can be problematic. We don't want to give anybody that is not legally able to possess a firearm, we don't want to give them those opportunities to possess it. So it's important that gun owners be responsible and ensure that their stuff is locked up. Make sure that their vehicles are locked at night. Do your 9 p.m. routine check. 9 o'clock every night, set your alarm clock. Go around and check your cars to make sure they're locked. Check your doors to make sure they're locked so that we don't have any issues with that and things being stolen and used in other crimes. So that's what's important, and we all have to look out for each other. We're a community here. The police department is part of the community. It's important that we all work collectively for that one goal, which is the safety and security of everyone. Okay? Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Out of the hot seat now. I feel like you peppered so many questions at me.
No, it's okay, and we really do appreciate you guys, and I never want this to be adversarial at all. We're here, and there are times where stuff is happening so fast, and we have to get a handle on it and provide you with the most accurate information. And the last thing we want to do is tell you something and it turns out to be something that wasn't. And things always change. So, please feel free at any time. If you have any specific questions, don't hesitate to call me, and we'll work it out.
I want you to sit outside of my house every night.
I got you. I got you.